keep them cared for, and above all, keep them safe. Beth Pratt has spent her career in that industry and talks to us about the good and the bad and the ugly about making that decision and making it the right choice.
If you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe, and do come find us on Facebook or sign up at Patreon for early access and members-only goodies. Thanks for watching. Now let's get to work. I'd like to introduce you all to two close personal friends of the show. John and John are a pair of law enforcement officers with 3 decades of combined experience in helping people stay safe and what happens when that fails. They've built a shop, Shield Protection Products, that offers a full range of self-defense items like pepper spray and stun guns that real people can use in the real world. They're like-minded folks, so they also offer important safety equipment like fire extinguishers, medical kits, and car escape tools. They provide an instructional video with every purchase so you know how to use anything you buy. Find them at shieldprotectionproducts.com and use the discount code SFOTB10 to get 10% off of your purchase. That's SFOTB10 at shieldprotectionproducts.com. Seriously, friends, if you're looking for the best equipment to keep your family safe, along with advice from knowledgeable professionals on how to use it, while supporting this show and a small business that deserves it, you'll find it at Shield Protection Products. Go check them out and tell them Safest Family on the Block sent you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Safest Family on the Block, where knowledge is power. I'm your host, Jason, and joining me today is Beth Pratt. Hello, Beth.
Hello, Jason.
So glad to have you on today. Now, in 2007, Beth took a job as the activity director in a retirement community that turned into a career and a passion working with elders who have made the choice to live in senior housing communities. Since then, she's moved through the business of senior housing, from activities to admissions to marketing to operations, from driving an activity bus to planning staff training for CPR certification. She spent more than a decade working to keep safe seniors with reduced vision, impaired hearing, balance and mobility issues, those who are fully wheelchair or bedbound. As an admissions director, Beth has also counseled dozens upon dozens of families in how to approach the transition to assisted living or memory care community life, what to do to keep their elders comfortable, and how to protect their valued possessions when they join a community. And I really appreciate you bringing your expertise onto the show today. Alert viewers will notice that, the show started with thinking about how to take care of our kids, but part of being a parent, part of being an adult who's a protector is also, at some point, we need to start protecting our parents as well. And as everybody seems to be living longer and being active longer, these are questions that are on a lot of folks' minds. So really, again, I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I do a lot of talks locally about senior housing, so I'm excited to get to do this with you and talk about things a little bit more broadly than just my own small area here of, housing and options. So Thank you.
That makes really good sense. And I'd like to start with just, I think there's 3 stages of paying attention to this and keeping our parents safe or our other elders safe when we're thinking about moving into a retirement community. And the first one is making that decision. The retirement home is not an oubliette where we stick our parents the second we get the chance, but it's rather a decision we make, hopefully together, for their safety. And what are some of the things that we should be, or warning signs that it might be time to start having that conversation?
I love how you frame that, Jason, because a lot of people still talk about the home, right? The old method of the home, the warehousing of elders, and that's just not the paradigm of the modern moment. There's a lot of options, and it depends on financial decisions. I mean, this is a family decision that is so deep in so many different pockets of family life, right? So what are the reasons somebody starts to look? I always tell people, I'll be here when you're done managing a staff on your own. What does that mean? Now you've got a gardener. That's usually the first one, right? The guy that comes and takes care of the dirt shoveling and heavy lifting. You might have a caregiver that's companionate, because really you shouldn't drive farther than your own couple city blocks. You might have somebody that cooks a little, some light housekeeping. Maybe you have a fall. Now you got physical therapy coming to your home or getting back and forth to appointments. Now you've hired somebody else. Now maybe you need somebody to help you get up and get dressed in the morning. Now you've hired somebody else. So as soon as that staff becomes a little unwieldy is usually when we see on our side of the fence, family saying, let's have this talk. The other side of that, and I work specifically in memory care now, this was a transition I just made this year. is the signs and symptoms of mild cognitive impairment, age-related memory loss, and dementia diseases, which are all three different things. Some are normal and some are diseases. And when the decision-making capacity starts to change is the other factor. So even if someone is physically well and able to perform the activities of daily living, that's a jargony thing in our world, ADLs. If you can't dress yourself, if you cannot prepare food, if you cannot safely operate things in your home, you need help with those ADLs. So those are the physical needs. But if someone's coming on with some of those cognitive issues, how many checks are they sending to those asks for money every week? Those kind of things. So there's a lot of factors that come into play in this conversation.
That makes really good sense. Now, one thing that I think happens, unfortunately, to a lot of families is they start that conversation in response to something bad already happening.
The
where
event.
They find, the event. There's a term. There's a term. The event.
It's fine, but yeah, I always tell people, don't wait till the event. People will say, I don't want to waste your time doing a tour. Just give me the prices. No, you're not wasting my time. You're taking advantage of a resource that communities like ours play in the community. We are here to educate about what your options are. Come and take a tour. Even if you don't have an elder in your life, go look at a community. Go see what that looks like. How do you make a decision with a broken hip laying in a rehab bed while your kids are 4 states away? You can't. Now you're going to go where the social worker tells you you're going. So don't go without your choices made. Start looking. Take a tour every 5 years. Learn what's in your neighborhood. What town are you going to want to live in when you're retired? Look at what your options are. So yeah, don't wait for the event. Don't wait for the stroke, heart attack, cancer scare, broken hip, broken arm, car crash, whatever that is, because that's usually when we hear from people.
So do your research early, do it often, and have that plan in place.
Yeah, and information is power. We know this,
And we don't, I guess what I'm hearing you say is that have that plan in place 5 years, 10 years before you intend to pull the trigger on it.
Yeah.
But just have it there. That makes very good sense. We were very lucky with my sainted Gran, where she had a fall and she didn't break anything, but she couldn't get up until my dad happened to drop by, maybe 2 hours later. And as it turned out, there's a retirement home just a block and a half from my house. And I had covered them for a press assignment a couple of years ago for some work they were doing with single moms at the community college. And I was impressed with their programs, impressed with their attitude, and it was a block and a half away. And my youngest had just turned 2, so Gran was very excited about the idea of being a block and a half away from her great grandson. So that worked out, but we did it in response to the event, where it would have been much smarter to have figured that out ahead of time.
Yeah. And most people only do this research once or twice in their life for themselves and for an elder in their family or friend group. And it's often an adult daughter. It's not trying to cast aspersions. That's just usually what happens. It's usually an adult daughter that's sort of the legwork in that conversation at that point.
And I think that transitions into the second big question about, so it's time, whether the event has happened or whether we've got our ducks in a row ahead of time. I'm sitting down with somebody, or actually even before I sit down, doing my initial research. What are the things that I should look for that indicate a quality facility?
That's such a big question, right? We're all regulated in the state of Washington, where I am. We are tightly regulated. We have some of the strictest, most stringent requirements by our surveyors, our licensors from the state. We are surveyed annually. Those documents are public, and most people never bother to look. Why not? Look to see what the investigators find. Look at reports to Adult Protective Services. Just like for children, there is Adult Protective Services, APS. They're there to respond to issues. Now, we do have to mandate to all staff, if a resident and another resident get into an altercation, we call APS. That's part of the rules. It doesn't mean it's a ding against the facility. So you also want to be armed with, what am I reading in this document from the investigators? But it's often a narrative. It's often a bit subjective. but look at the date, look at what was said, look at what that was. Those things are going to be very important in understanding the safety and quality of care outcomes, right? For people that are looking at memory care, skilled nursing, and assisted living. That is not true in just independent retirement living, okay, which are usually higher end choices. It's like living on a cruise ship. Okay, so your meals are prepared in a restaurant, you've got activities in a bus, which is what I used to do. So they're going to be a little bit different. When you walk in, is it clean? How does it smell? Is the staff smiling, or do they look like they've been through the ringer? If they look like they've been through the ringer, you might want to think about how is the staffing managed. People will go to the referral sources like the A Place for Mom, Caring Transitions. There's a bunch of different companies out there that will help refer you. And I have a lot to say about what that looks like from our side, because it's not the same as it looks to the consumer. But they have these lists of questions to ask. What's your staffing ratio? Well, that's kind of a silly question, because the staffing ratio will change based on the care needs of the population in any given moment. So that's not a great question, but watch the caregivers in the space. Now you've got a picture. Now you can see if they're running or if they look calm. Do they do their job with care, kindness, and patience? Or do they look like they have to get to the next thing? That's a better answer to that question about staffing ratios. That's not useful. How does it look to you? And your gut matters. Ask for a tour with a meal, test the food. Schedule your tour the day you're coming if you can. Are they responsive? Do they understand you have an urgent need? They can't plan the meal ahead if you do it that way either. They can't clean ahead if they don't know you're coming. And as the person who gives the tours, I don't mind it. Walk in. If I'm available, I'll give you a tour. If I'm not, I'll tell you why. I'm with someone else and I will get to you as soon as I can. Can we reschedule? But if you get pushback at any of those places, right? Does this make sense? You're watching somebody's working in the grandparent's home. So forecast, it's your mother, it's your father, it's your grandmother. If you walk in and you see chaos, that's your grandma's new house. Do you want her in chaos? Probably not. You want her calm, peaceful, fun, smiling, happy people, right? And I can tell you, we don't have a lot. I live on the north coast of Washington State. We have 8 communities of memory care and assisted living up here. I know which ones I would refer to if I'm not available, based on those factors. But your gut matters. Do they answer your questions? Do you feel like it was honest? Do you feel like they're listening? Did they hear you, or did they just say, oh, well, and then we provide blah, 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 and give you a menu of services? Well, that's not useful to you. You want to know how Nan is going to get a shower. You want to know when that meal is going to happen and how do you address her needs from a dietary perspective. Not, we serve 3 meals a day and 2 snacks a day. And if you get an info dump, that person is either new, doesn't care, or doesn't know. And those things are all a little bit tricky. New, well, that's, training.
It's true, but also if they're, if I'm coming in to do a site tour, just from a business perspective, if they're sending the new guy to talk to me, that seems to me like it would be a bit of a warning flag about staff longevity, about turnover, and about how tight that ship is.
Yeah. And, your marketers do change hands. And for me and the other folks that do admissions in my region, we all know each other because it's a small town. If you change jobs, you just say, I'm new in this community. I will get you the answers that you need. And let me introduce you to my executive director who's been here for X years, or let me introduce you to my business office manager. I'm new, I came from. Again, transparency and honesty are telling. It talks about the integrity of the firm that you're working with.
Yeah. Sounds very much like interviewing somebody for a position where their answers to the question, the content of the answers are almost secondary to how they act when they answer, whether they come off as squirrely, whether they come off as a little too slick, or whether, like you said, they're being transparent and honest, especially about the things they don't know.
Yes. I mean, technically we're salespeople. right? We're selling a
Mhm.
service. We're selling a rental with services. So yes, we're salespeople. We want your business.
Mhm.
We're not selling cars though. That's not what we do. What we do is create a solution for families who are in distress most of the time. Like I said, again, how many of them come to me after the event and they've got 10 days left on that Medicare bed in the skilled nursing rehab. They need to get out of there and they aren't going to be allowed to go home. So, that's, yeah. I always come back to that event because it's the hardest thing. People are often in a hurry and that's, so your person who's responding to you should understand that and recognize that the service they're providing you by providing you with information is key to the health and well-being of the people you love the most. And that's important.
Wow. It seems like once again on this show, I'm hearing an expert tell me, pay attention, have a plan, do your research, then enact that plan well ahead, have the plan in place so that much later, if the bad stuff happens, you're already prepared for it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, for a lot of folks, though, I'm guessing, what percentage would you say of the folks who come in to talk to you about a room for an elder are the people who are prepared like that, where they're coming in advance versus the ones that are in a state of emergency?
Less than 20%.
Okay.
Less than 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to stay home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if all you do is go from bed to recliner, caregivers are coming into your space. You can't use your garden anymore. You can't walk through your home. You can't even go down the stairs any longer. There is an emotional desire to stay in a home that is your home. And so most people try to, we'll make that work. And a lot of spouse couples make promises. I'll never, terrible promise to make, because you can't be sure of that. You just can't. And I have watched caregivers die before the resident who had the caregiver spouse die before their partner who needed the care because their heart gave out. The stress got to them. And it's honestly, I watched one take the wrong medication, took his box instead of hers twice, just out of sheer exhaustion, and just would not reach out for the help. So a lot of folks really do. It's critical crisis crunch moments that they come to us, and we're here to listen, absorb that information as fast as possible, move as quickly as we can, but also if people are moving too fast, how are they prepared for your elder? And if you're pushing them to do it tomorrow, how are they prepared for your elder? And often that comes that way. And so we do the best we can, and then we kind of troubleshoot for the first couple of weeks to get the medications in place and the care plan worked out and which caregiver is the best fit to that person. And if they're going to have a roommate in the building I work in now, we do accept state pay clients. They are in shared rooms, so they have a roommate. So we need to be careful about how we approach that. Some people just don't get along. And so that, if your person you're working with is trying to push you too fast, that's another red flag for me. That would be something about their occupancy is low, ownership's leaning on them to get more bodies in the room. We do lose a certain number of people a month because that's what happens. Around here, our building sizes are pretty consistent. So it's about 3 or 4 out a month. So yeah, your person is doing admissions, they're being watched to make sure they're doing their follow through to get you to move in. But again, we're not selling cars here, so that matters.
Yeah, those high pressure sales tactics are especially inappropriate for something like this. Yeah.
And I go bad every time anybody pushes on me for it. No, it's not what we do here.
As you said, about 20% of people take your advice and have this plan already worked out. When my wife and I are the 20%, our plan is moving about as early as we're allowed to and act like we did in the dorms.
Yeah. It'll be more fun.
Yeah, I mean, except the drugs will be mandatory instead of something you get in trouble for. So,
and they're more interesting.
Yeah. But for the folks who do not have a plan, because there's going to be an emergency, there's the event. I learned a new term today. I'm very happy about that. But there's the event, and you're doing it, and you're in a hurry. And when we're in a hurry, we screw up. what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see when people are coming in here, they're coming in hot, and what are the best ways, given those circumstances, to avoid them?
Going on price alone. That's the big one. You're going to save $1. No, you're not. If you're finding a bigger differential than about $500 in your level of care for the exact same level of services, somebody is cutting a cost as a promotion, whether they said it or not. In one building locally that I was doing admissions for, last year, I moved 4 residents out of a different community in my own town to my community, not because I poached them, but because they came to me. They did not get what they were promised.
So listen, if you've gotten this far into the show, you like what I'm doing here. So do I, but I need your help to make it all it can be. For just $0.10 a day, you can help this happen by supporting the show on Patreon. In return, you'll get my undying thanks, early access to episodes, a monthly safety worksheet, and other cool goodies. We're at patreon.com/safestfamily and waiting for your help. Please consider it. It's $3 a month to you, but a big deal to me.
The discount disappeared after 3 months. They were told it was forever, but it wasn't in writing. If it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. And I'm not a fan of the huge companies. I'm a fan of smaller management organizations, family run if you can find it. I think they're leaner and meaner, less overhead. So the costs getting passed to you that way are really for the care in the building you're living in, not to support a building that's struggling in Issaquah, Washington, or in, Boise, Idaho. It's smaller businesses, I think they're my preference. Not that the big guys can't do it. I know that there are some that do better than others. It just depends on their operator in the building and how that building is functioning. But often the big mistake is going where the price is lower. The other one is going on, look at this big, beautiful grand staircase that grandma can never walk up or down. Well, that's lovely, but do they have the care that you need? Folks also fail to read a document. In Washington state, it's required that we disclose our level of service. It's called a disclosure form. It is in my marketing packets and it is in my move-in packets. I ask people to read it carefully. There are, yes, we do this, and no, we don't do that, in very boring language. It's a great tool for insomnia, but incontinence is one thing. A colostomy bag is another. Sugar monitoring is one thing. Insulin injections are another. If your elder is aiming towards one of those big fat no's in that document, you may be moving twice just to get a different level of care somewhere else. So that's another mistake people make, is they don't read that document. They go, it's pretty, it's fluffy. They're going to give me this great discount for 3 months. But what did the care level look like? Did you go watch them do their job with another resident? Did you see how the resident's care was? Did you ask to talk to the residents? Did you ask to sit in the dining room? Now, I realize under the COVID precautions, Oregon and Washington are very similar. I think California too. We've all got really similar restrictions. Our guests now, we can have guests in the building. They cannot enter the dining room. So right now, what the advice I'm giving you is more general than it is for these current precautions. We're all anticipating that we're going to be masked probably through this winter as well, with limitations on how we can have visitors. So again, you're going to have to work with what they've got, but just know we're all working under state guidance. This is not a company by company decision being made. And if somebody's breaking the guidance, then maybe you should look at that too.
Makes sense. So in most industries that I'm enough of a part of to know this, each community, there's one or two people who, the guy or the gal who just knows this place is good, this place is crap. Who is that person generally speaking in a community? Is it somebody working over at adult services? Is it somebody at the paper? Who is that? Who do we ask?
So under the Older Adults Act at the federal level, Every
Mhm.
state has the equivalent of what Washington calls the Area Agency on Aging. They are a clearinghouse of information. They can, especially for folks that need state pay, folks without the financial resources to pay for what we do. And let's call a spade a spade. My region is less expensive than others. In assisted living, you're paying $4,000 a month to start. Memory care is $6,000. Nursing care is 10 to 12. And it goes up from there. Those are starting costs when you don't need much help yet. So we do eliminate a lot of people from a financial basis. But if you take state pay, then there's a different game afoot there. Or if people have long-term care insurance, there's a lot of pay options we could go on for days about. But the person who's going to know are your social workers, at your discharge planners at the hospital and the skilled nursing. So if you go for, it's the event, you're now in rehab, your hip has been pinned back together, you're in physical therapy, you got your 99 days of Medicare days in a skilled nursing. Their social workers are reaching out to the communities that they know because they tour us. They know who has the shower with the roll-in option. They know who has an oven that can be unplugged or doesn't have an oven at all because this person's memory is going. They know who has access to home health more frequently than another building. And they know who they like to work with, which again, I think is telling. Your social workers are going to work with the people that are responsive to the needs of the clients coming through. So I would say that would be my first choice. Area Agency on Aging offices, your senior information centers, they're going to be able to tell you all the options and share with you state data from investigation. They cannot make a recommendation. Okay, they can't play favorites. Your senior centers are local community organizations, usually nonprofits or run by a city parks program. Ours in Swim and Port Angeles are one of each. They have sponsors and our buildings sponsor them. They're going to tell you who their sponsors are. So you might get somebody who has opinions, but it's a business. And that's the big dirty secret. We're moving you into home. We're going to make it like home. Guess what? You just moved into a business and it's not a democracy. And so again, we're sponsors of events. We are going to be involved to varying degrees. If we don't sponsor a senior center and the other guy does, who are they going to send you to?
Yeah.
And then let's talk about placement agencies. They collect a sizable fee. Sizable. They advertise as free, but when they move someone and they recommend it, so I get a referral from a Place for Mom or one of the others, there's many, 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 but that's the one everybody knows the name of. They get a full month's rent and a full month's care upon the move-in of that resident. Not 90 days later, not 30 days later. If they move out in 2 weeks, they still collect their fee. They are not free. If you do not have a contract with them to pay that fee, you are not on the list of referrals that they send to the family. And that's kind of another little, it's a commonly known in our industry, but again, you do this once for you and once for Grand. So how many people are going to have this interaction enough times to know that? And there are local firms that do placement that are a little different. They don't charge as high and they are more hands-on than a call center in Topeka that sends you a list of who's available in your region that will pay their fee. Those are two different things.
So it sounds like if we have the event, talking to the nurse who was there at intake and outlook, and you mentioned physical therapists, which sounds absolutely right, because they work with how many people every week and see people coming in from the different places.
Yes.
And I'm sure they have a really good sense for who's coming in healthy and who's coming in stressed.
Yes. Absolutely. And they come to our buildings. Ask your home health. Okay, so now you've had not quite that event, but you had an open wound. Okay, you had an abscess that had to be removed and packed. So your wound nurse comes every other week. They come here too. They know what it looks like inside. Ask them. Ask them how it smells in there. Ask them how the patients are when they see them. Ask them how responsive the nursing staff is. Do the nurses respond to phone calls within a day or two? Or do they let it sit and have to be called again? Those things all matter. They all matter. But I think your medical professionals, I leave doctors off the list for a simple reason. Doctors are in the business of keeping people well and making them better. Most of the diseases of aging don't get better, and we're going to die anyway. And I realize for my age, I'm a little calm about that but I am. When I was 30 in my residence and say, I don't know why I'm still breathing in and out, I'm ready to go. That was jarring. When you're 30, that's jarring. But over time, you kind of absorb the fact that at some point you do make peace with your mortality. And that's the reality of it. Doctors often do not do the touring of our facilities that we would like them to do. We invite them, but they're busy. They do not see the inside and often conflate what memory care and skilled nursing do, which are not the same thing, or conflate what assisted living and independent living are. They're not the same thing. So while doctors are a good resource for, is it time to talk about it? Yes. Which facility? Probably not.
So this is putting me in mind, one of the best pieces of advice for travel safety I ever got, that was from our interview with Andrea Lashak during season 2, was creating a list of conditions in which you're going to abort mission well ahead of time. Because if you got your scuba gear on and you're out there and you suddenly get a sinus headache or you cut your arm, you're getting in the water, right? But if 2 weeks ahead of time, you sat there with your wife and you said, okay, listen up. We're going to stop and go back to the hotel under these circumstances, hell or high water, and make that agreement ahead of time. Then you're setting yourself up for safety and stopping ego and things like that from getting in the way.
Right.
It feels like that might be a very smart thing to do with your elders, to sit down and say, okay, guys, under these circumstances, we're going to go ahead and look for a place for you to be.
Yeah.
And write that down, even sit down so that when you have to have the conversation, it's right there. It might not be as seamless. For that matter, when I've executed that advice and when I'm traveling, it's not always seamless. But
Emotional decision making never is.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully that kind of conversation is useful and can be helpful. But another piece of advice I'd really love to get from you is when your parent, when your grandparent needs to move into assisted living situation, but is not on board. What are some of the best ways to have that conversation that leaves them feeling respected, but also moves towards keeping them safer?
Oftentimes, the reason the elder in question is blind to their dependence upon the adult children that are now having to set aside their own lives to step in, right? Often there's some cognitive impairment involved in that. Usually folks who do not have cognitive impairments do recognize that their physical ability to get around in their own space is failing. Women tend to take it better than fellas when it's their physical well-being. When it's cognitive, it's a lot harder, right? Because as our cognition declines, our emotional memory lasts longer. So having that conversation become a contentious emotional reaction stops it cold from the future, because it will always trigger that emotion until you can figure out a way to reschedule that, get that wiring to reattach to a positive feeling. Usually what I advise families to do, if the parent is resistant and says, no, I'm fine, and they're touring with me, and I've got daughter and mom, in such a way that mom can't see daughter's face reacting to her answers. So you still cook for yourself. Oh yes, and the daughter's going in the background. So you do your own laundry. Oh yeah, of course I do. The daughter's going, I pick it up every Tuesday. Make it hurt a little. Don't show up as the adult child. Make them struggle a little. You're making it easy by providing them with all these helpful things, but they can't see the impact on you, and they can't see what you're doing to keep them there. That's important. A lot of folks opt not for community care and want private pay. They want, or private caregivers. They want someone to come to them. I have two thoughts on that. First of all, it's $25,000 to $40,000 a month to do it that way, 24 hours a day. You're going to be billed at $35 an hour, 24 hours a day. You can do the math. It's a lot of flipping money. So you best be prepared for that. So that's not really a great option, right? The other problem is we have a massive staffing shortage in healthcare right now. This is not a secret. And this past 18 months has not helped. In the state of Arizona alone, 50% of building administrators in assisted living did not renew their licenses this year. 50% of their experienced operators in community life are that burned out. If we focus on home care, where everybody has travel time and it's one-on-one, when I have 4 caregivers for 40 people, and I know that they're all going to get care 24 hours a day for $8,000 a month. We need to talk about pragmatism here. We don't have the resources to send a caregiver to everybody's house, and most people don't have the financial resources to make it happen. So making it hurt a little, making the financial piece obvious, often with gentlemen, that's a better argument than you're physically unable to do X, Y, and Z. They already know, they don't need to hear it from you. The other thing is, let me tell them. Just as children are different with an adult who is not you than they are with their own parent, so too are your parents with an adult who is not you. They have a responsibility to you as their parent, as your parent, to be strong and a leader for you. They have been that your whole life. How do you tell them that they need to swap roles with you? Maybe not. Maybe the social worker, doctor, or professional in the community setting can talk with them more frankly. And I'm not emotionally vested in it. It doesn't break my heart to say to somebody, I think we can help you and I think this is a good idea. It might be harder for you. And all of those things have to come into the conversation. But I think the resistance is real. I have a little anecdote I'd like to share about my own family. Alzheimer's runs in my family. My grandmother was one of 10 children. We now know that out of the 10, 5 have passed with an Alzheimer's diagnosis, and 1 is well on his way to the diagnosis. We already know he has symptoms. 6 of 10, 3 of them died younger than the age of diagnosis for the other 6. So we don't know. My great uncle Andy, who died with COVID last March, right after his birthday, was sad. It was hard on the family. He and his wife had made that promise. I will never put you in a home. It's a conversation about dignity, about respect. I will not disrespect you and do that. My great aunt Barbara, with a dementia disease which was a vascular dementia, which was a result of strokes, stripped naked when she got gravy on her shirt at the Thanksgiving table in front of the whole family. What do you think was less dignified? What was less respectful? And I don't mean that as a criticism. It's just a different way of looking at it. I mean, I don't know that she was actually naked. I just know she took off her shirt. But still, it's how does a family approach this? Which thing is more important to you? Keeping a promise you shouldn't have made, or keeping the promise you did make that does make sense, which is to love and cherish and take care of. And sometimes getting help is the way to do it. If you can afford the care in home and you've got family supports and you can do it, great. If not, then community living is a really good option, especially when you've got really good options in your area. And most areas do. And there's everything from small group homes with 2 or 3 or 4 folks to big group homes of 12 to communities of hundreds. There's so much to choose from. So many different kinds of options, price points, levels of luxury, So there's a lot of things to choose from that most people with, careful planning can make work for their family.
So moving on to even more difficult topics. We've gotten to the point where we've made the decision, we've toured the site, we've talked our parents into being on board with it, we've moved in, it's been a little while. Abuse happens, neglect happens. We wish it didn't. I imagine that you wish it didn't, even harder than I do.
It's ugly.
What are some of the most important warning signs? And let's split this conversation into 2. First of all, just in general, and then about people who've got some cognitive impairment, because that's a whole different ball of wax, I imagine. But so for just kind of regular general community living, what are some of the red flags, warning signs that we should look for abuse and neglect of our elders in care there?
Well, change of condition, right? That's the phrase we use. If you see that your person is losing weight, falling frequently, you drop in for a visit, they're not so clean. They've got bruises that are not just the Coumadin. And we all know if somebody's on blood thinners, they bruise like with a touch. I mean, so the bruising has to be kind of specific, but you're looking for fingerprint bruises. You're looking for those kinds of things in communities, residential communities. I'm not talking about skilled nursing, but in residential communities where it's memory assisted living, retirement living, those folks, their care should not be so heavy-handed that they should be leaving a mark. Those kind of things. Usually you can see an emotional change, just as you can with a child, an adult, depression, withdrawal, change of just behavior in general, a reaction to specific people in the room. And if you start to talk about them with memory care, of course, these folks can't tell me something's wrong, but their behavior tells me. We had a gentleman acting out in such a way that was like very strange even for him. And in memory care, I can assure you, we have funny words for what we see, but we have to be respectful and try not to say, out loud, somebody's not wearing pants. So there's a fashion show. That means go get that guy dressed, But he was acting strangely, and I was like, something's going on. The next day, it was a medical condition. He had a urinary infection. So it's, little changes like that can also happen. But if somebody's reacting emotionally, that's usually your best bellwether. Most abuse is by family, not by care staff. So being aware of how an elder is reacting to the other guests that are coming to see them, especially financial abuse, is often family. And that's the hardest to watch. Watching families squabble over $40,000 is ridiculous, and it's heartbreaking. And having had to watch someone dying of bone cancer at the age of 93 while they had to get a restraining order against her eldest son at the end of her life from harassing her for money. Those things are the most awful thing we see. Death isn't hard, it's natural. Sickness, yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's part of what we go through as elders as we age. We are going to approach things that are going to hurt, they're going to affect us. But watching the financial and emotional abuse at the hands of family is one of the hardest things we watch. And we report it. Of course we do. We're mandatory reporters, and you're darn right we're watching.
It seems very much like a lot of parents are very, very worried about a stranger abduction, about the guy in the candy van. But everybody who's knowledgeable is aware that the abuse is coming from the parents, the uncles, the coaches, teachers.
Yes.
And it sounds like the same thing's true then and at the other side of life too.
It is, and it's heartbreaking. I've seen all sorts of interesting things go on. Working with folks trying to help find a solution while one sibling is screaming about, you can't spend that, that's my inheritance. No, it's not. It's their money. They're not dead yet. And it's hard to watch. No, she can't sell that to pay for this. That part's on mine. My brothers will have to sell their part. It
feels like a fundamental lack of perspective, but
yeah.
I try not to judge, but damn it, I feel like I'd be judging.
I take my judging in the car and scream on my way home and try to just maintain some professionalism. You're right. You never know what the rest of the story is. The hard thing for me also, there's the financial stuff that goes on that I just think is so gross. But the lack of connection. I can't visit because I can't take it. It's too hard to see them like this. They didn't drop you in a garbage can when you barfed in their ear when you were 6 months old. So maybe don't say that out loud. I don't have a lot of patience for it. It's
fair enough.
Memory units are hard to walk into. I'm not going to lie. It is hard. You have to jump into their reality. Their brains are coming unwired is the best analogy I can use. It's not memory. Memory loss is a very polite thing to say. What if somebody got into your desktop and started pulling the teensy little wires out of your CPU and the little teeny wires out of your RAM and the little teeny, just one at a time? And now what if there were thousands of those CPUs to fire that computer? and randomly wires are being pulled. That's what dementia looks like. So today, oh no, she had a great day. She must be getting better. No, she had a good day. Cherish that, because tomorrow it might be 1943 and we're going to join her in 1943 tomorrow. And the next day it might be that you're her grandmother and not her daughter. We're going to join her on that day in that space. And it is a hard space. I'm not saying that it's not. And I respect the challenge that folks have, especially the family that isn't present all the time, that are coming every 6 months or every year or on their every other year vacation to come back to mom and dad's home or whatever that looks like. The changes can be drastic and hard to see. So I always encourage them, well, visit more often. It does become easier, I think, to see the transitions when that's the case.
Wow. Oof. It's
a lot, Jason. It's a lot.
It's but I really appreciate you taking the time to share this information with us today. So I've learned a lot. And before we go, what's the smart question I should have asked you?
I think that you asked it, which is, who do you ask? And I think that's the one that people falter on. You ask the doctor, right? Or you ask the minister. The minister may or may not know. It just depends, right? I think that's important. And I think that was the best question you asked. And honestly, Jason, there's so many questions to ask about such things. Like, we didn't talk about the financial side. We didn't talk about veterans benefits. We didn't talk about what happens if you're state pay. There's so many other things. But when you're talking about safety and the security of moving somebody you love dearly and who has loved you dearly and supplied for you your whole life, anchor and safe harbor, right? Asking all the questions are the most important questions. And knowing that you are going to approach this the same way that your loving parent would have approached preschool for you. How seriously is that? How serious is that research? Picking a pediatrician. What did you do for your babies? Do that for your mom. Do it for your dad. Do it for your aunt and uncle. And if they don't have somebody and you've got somebody in your neighborhood, do it for them. There are a lot of elder orphans out there, and they're alone for a variety of reasons. Maybe they never had kids. Maybe their kids passed. Maybe they're, for whatever reason, estranged. Be there for your elders, because they need us and they need all of us. And, it takes a village their whole life. And the residents in a memory care unit are as dependent on us as children in an ICU. We have to be there for them. And if you find a place for your elder that makes you feel safe in that way, you've got the right place.
I got nothing to add. That's that. Well done. Thank you so much, Beth, and thank you everybody for watching. We hope that this helps. I know that this is a topic that's difficult on so many levels, and I hope that this is helpful to somebody. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this with you today. I really hope that your audience can find some good stuff in here that helps them as they move through their lives too.
I'm confident that that's so.
Today's episode was brought to you by our heroes over at Patreon: Todd Elner, Beth Edwards, Douglas Sedevy, Hugh O'Donnell, Art Brick, American Institutes of Kenpo, Beth Pratt, Richard Hubbard, Wayfinder Advantage, Kit Bradley, Lee Douglas, Amy Rivers, Neil Fastine, Kate Carlson, Ron Payton, Jenny Coakley, and Chris Jordan. Join the illustrious heroes by backing us at patreon.com/safestfamily. If you can't, that's okay, but do consider liking us and subscribing here on YouTube or sharing your favorite episodes on social media. Even a little bit on your end can make a lot of difference here. Thank you for watching today. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.